This is the Mod Pod, brought to you by Modality, helping businesses optimize their Microsoft technologies everywhere.
Hello and welcome to episode 13. And episode 13, we are going to be tackling the rights and wrongs of licensing, the good and the bad and the broken of processes, and the highs and lows of using social media in business. And I am joined by two colleagues today, Chris Wheeler, M365 pre-sales consultant, and Jacob Hay, who is incident manager team lead. Got through that in one take. Take that, guys. Right, let's crack on and tackle topic number one.
So, regarding the wonderful world of Microsoft licensing, I think it's a given that we haven't really seen any other product on the market quite like the solutions that Microsoft offer. You know, in terms of the vast majority of different platforms that are available on that subscription, I think we're not going to see anything else like it for a good while, unless obviously all these wonderful acquisitions that are going on in the background. Maybe Google might possibly compete, but in regards to like the landscape, there's so much on offer with it. So we see a lot of these conversations going about with colleagues, with customers, and mainly around the usage and also the utilization of these sort of these packages that Microsoft 365 entails. So back in the days of like normal traditional software asset management or IT asset management, or SAM or ITAM as they used to call it, all sort of licensing used to be quite individual, so people can kind of refer bits of software back to certain licenses or certain individual packages. And when it started to evolve into this wonderful cloud landscape of loads of different services being offered, I tend to believe that the term like software asset management tends to go out the window slightly, especially when there's so much on offer, and trying to utilize everything all in one go tends to be quite difficult. So a good conversation mainly that kind of goes around would be around what licenses have you already got at the moment, and what's the percentage of the utilization of that. Tends to go in one of two directions, and I think this is kind of where I want to bring you guys in, just to kind of say, if you've got, say, like a small cut on your finger and you apply a massive gauze to it, I mean, technically it does the job. It covers up quite nicely, but have you kind of overutilized that sort of model? So it's kind of like a half glass empty, half glass full approach. And in some cases where like the glass is half empty, do you guys see that as like a negative experience, especially when it comes to people going, well, we've actually got all these licenses, we're only utilizing 20% of it. Maybe we need to cut back on our, maybe we need to look at that like expenditure or that utilization. And that kind of leads into like a more time-consuming process of looking at, all the different bundles that are available. There's a guy he's produced some really good content on GitHub called Aaron Dinage, and he's basically broken down each separate product within each of the M365 platforms really well. So you kind of spend a bit of time going through that and kind of having like an analysis over the cost of each separate product, and then you have like this sort of tipping point where there's the sort of like a value when you go for the bundles compared to each product separately. So there's that little element that's very, very time consuming, and it's very complex, and it's, it takes a lot of time doing it, but actually some of the rewards are pretty good. Or on the other side of things, do you see that as like a glass half full, where, you want to see if you can try and, increase the whatever liquid you want in that glass, but do you see it as an opportunity to grow that out as well? Obviously, there's certain issues or certain challenges. Let's be positive about this. There's certain challenges around, how how to go about obviously adopting more and more of these packages. But what do you guys think?
Well, I don't know that anybody I've ever come across really fully grasps Microsoft licensing, not from the corporate angle. I think it's when you've got the packages like the E3, like the E5, obviously they've got a lot of stuff in there. Come back to your gauze analogy, or into medium or large. but there's a lot of stuff in there. So there's one piece which is, how do you know, or how do you keep a check on what you're using versus what you need? I think the second thing, which is the bit that really confuses me, and I've been around this stuff for a long time, is when you refer to the bundles, there are so many different variants of these licensing. So whether you go for, your E3, your E5, or E3 plus this, and your EMS, and you've got your it gets so ridiculously complicated. But I imagine that most organizations, I'm getting my big tarry brush out here again to just paint big swathes across people, will have been sold the E3 or the E5 because it's a fairly simple story. Look at all this stuff you get.
Yeah.
Whether or not you need all that stuff is a totally different question.
Yeah, that's a big talking point, and especially when, if say the step up from E3 to E5 would just be we only require phone system license, for example, that justifies them buying an E5. But actually, on the back of that, you've got all of these other tools that maybe a project got halted previously because it wasn't a huge requirement, and now all of a sudden you've got the license and the capability to spin this up. Obviously, you have to package that up with like a good adoption process around it. It's quite interesting. It's a really, really interesting subject. And once you get down to the real utilization side of things, it could either be one or the other. It's like, oh, look at all this good stuff, or actually we may want to kind of either consolidate or possibly review all of our utilization. I mean, it's like, I'm sorry, I keep making loads of references like plasters and gauzes and stuff, but I'd be really disappointed if I had a new Mercedes and they didn't tell me about the sport button. It was there, I paid for it, but they didn't tell me it, and actually it's quite a good fun. But
should you have looked at the dashboard that you've got to find out that you've got a sport button?
Well, if I had time to look at it, I might have been concentrating on the road. Oh dear.
Yeah. I think we need to pare back the analogies.
Yeah, sorry, I've got no more. But
okay.
Yeah, it's right. It's certainly a really sort of interesting conversation, because whatever way you look at it, there's opportunity there for people to really start to look at everything that E5 has to offer. Mainly like it might be an awareness piece they need to look at, or maybe they need to spend time actually. I'm going to bring this up. I did say I probably wasn't going to, but that whole SAM and ITAM thing, there's a new sort of abbreviation that I like to use called CLAM, Cloud Licensing Asset Management. Really great. The reason being is that because Microsoft 365 is so huge, it just needs probably a person or like a group of people that will really spend time to really assess each separate product, possibly even the price against it. Mainly say, okay, well, if this person in this group needs 3 out of the 5 functions, we know it's an E5 license. As soon as they match it up against user personas or what they're doing with the data or devices that they're using, it then matches up. And we're seeing that more and more, especially in our workshops as well, where we kind of map sort of functionality against those user personas as well.
Okay. And I mean, Jacob, from your side, the asset management piece that Chris is talking about, do you think from that sort of the managed service side, people take that into consideration, or do you think they just go, we've got 1,000, 1,500 people?
Yeah, I think
we're going to get that.
Yeah, I think it's difficult to really say where that responsibility is lying. I think it's a real hot topic, like you say, because where does that responsibility sort of lie, especially in licenses that expire after a certain amount of time and renew? If something's happened in pre-sales or in project phase and then comes into support, who looks after that renewal at the end? Does it go back to accounts? Does it go through to the sales rep? Is it something that's managed by the SDM? Is that something that's support responsibility? Is that, there's a whole list of people there that can be involved in that renewal, and who does that lie with? Where does that responsibility end?
Well, I guess the other thing as well is that we've got potentially plenty of places that it could sit within our organisation. Someone should own it. I think there's also a question from the customer side. how many customers actually have people checking their licensing and the usage against it? Because realistically, if you're paying for an E5, okay, so let's spin things around. I'm the CIO of some organization somewhere. If I'm paying for my E5 licenses or whatever across the board, surely am I not going to be sitting there going, right, what do I get for this? Oh, I get all of this sort of stuff. Right. And that's brilliant. So you've got all the bells and whistles and the phone systems, but why are we paying that for the people on the factory floor? Because they don't have phones. And isn't there a sort of a common sense check that needs to be done here? And I would say that's the onus is probably on the business, but you know, how do you get a customer to sit there and go, yeah, I've bought this, but actually, do I really want to have a conversation to sit there and analyze what I've bought?
This is kind of where the opportunity, you know, especially around partner experience, comes in quite nicely. So in previous roles, it's always been something which I've been quite, it's going to sound really sad, but I've been quite fond of, especially with the processes of going through, you know, different spreadsheets, different utilizations, going through user personas. And actually, when you get to an end goal of showing the customer what originally they thought about doing to where they could go now, especially around sort of customizing licenses, because you know you can have, you know, certain bits together to achieve certain functions. Good example, education sector is quite a good example actually. So the A1 license is completely free of charge. You can then buy the Office apps on top, or you can go for an A3 license, which includes both, but you pay more for it. You know, you lose some certain functions, but, you know, taking time to understand, like, you know, what different options are available, or just really understanding like who's going to use what. Okay, not everyone's going to need Office apps, great, that's a reduction anyway. And then you start going into, okay, analytics, security, voice, all that good stuff, all of the add-on licenses, you know, like you've got your Visios, you've got your projects, you've got Dynamics, you know, in the world of telephony, you've got common area phone licenses, you know, and then really starting to spend a lot of time not around the technology as such. You know, the technology works, but just understanding the best way of licensing that as well. Does that sit, like you said before, does that sit with IT? Does that sit with the CIO? Does it sit with finance or procurement? Because obviously they're ordering the licenses. It's a big massive question mark that, you know, it's apparent that doesn't usually get looked at too much internally, and obviously that's where your partners come in with all that wonderful bundle of experience. And obviously Microsoft have got their great SAM team as well, and they've got all of their licensing experts as well to help along the way as well.
I do wonder whether or not some organizations just buy one of the main SKUs out of ease.
Yes, it's easy. Yeah, just, you know, just throw the gauze. You mentioned the gauze. It does the job, you know. And, you know, there are other sort of things to bear in mind, that if you're a massive enterprise customer, you've been so used to purchasing licensing on like organization-wide agreements, so everything's all standardized. You know, that used to be just the normal automated process of just, okay, we've got, say, 5,000, 6,000 users. We're going to buy 5,000 E3 licenses. Great. Okay, there might be a few bits where they kind of identify that mainly like 1,000 people are frontline workforce, for example, or frontline workers.
Yeah, but it's quite generic, isn't it? It's quite a generic approach.
Yeah, but, you know, that changes between like an E plan and an F plan, so that's not too bad. There's a little bit of differentiation, but then you start going into like the E1s, the E3s, the E5s, the bolt-on licenses, all of the more kind of granular bits of really getting a good indication of exactly, you know, you've got the difference between your frontline and your general workforce, but actually your general workforce is then made up of loads of different departments with loads of different security needs and loads of different requirements. They might use different devices, you know. So is that a HR thing? Who knows? You know, getting to know your staff a bit better, would that then sit with HR instead? That's another you know, it's a mystery.
Yeah. It is quite a complicated field, but I do think it largely gets overlooked, because the amount of businesses we go into and they go, yeah, we've got E5 across the board.
Yeah.
And you just look at it and go, what are you doing in security?
Yeah.
Oh, we haven't really looked at that yet.
No, yeah. The one question I usually ask is, why have you gone for that? and it takes a bit of a think. But if they come back and say, we use it purely for telephony, then okay, there's an opportunity here because you've got all these other wonderful tools to use. What are your thoughts? You might not be speaking to the right person, because if you're looking at telephony, you're speaking to somebody in the communications team, or somebody who looks after the PBX phone system. So actually looking at all the other features of E5 around security analytics, that's where you can start bringing in more and more people to say, actually, this project you want to kick off, actually, did you know that we've got like loads of licenses that you can utilize for it? Oh, happy days. I don't have to budget for it, and spend a bit more time obviously thinking how we're going to get it up and rolling, who's on board, bringing other tools or other sort of great processes like ACM, adoption change management, other sort of third-party tools which might enhance the experience as well. Possibilities are endless.
It's definitely something that customers need to look out for, I think, though, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
it's just a sanity check more than anything, isn't it? We bought all this. What are we doing with it? I either reevaluate your licenses, and Microsoft won't like this, but maybe take some of them down, or actually look at using the rest of the stuff you're blooming well paying for.
Yep. Fill the glass up.
Fill the glass up. Or half fill the Mercedes.
Press that sport button.
We can combine your analogies.
I'm going to press that sport button. I'm going to put NOS in it. We're going to go Need for Speed style.
Brilliant. All right. Well, why don't we go on to the second topic, which was the good, the bad, and the broken of the processes. Okay, let's go to topic 2.
So the good, the bad, and the broken of processes. I think this is a really hot topic because there's an argument for having rigid processes and there's an argument against it. I've been really lucky to work on both sides of that. In working in managed service, there was a lot of processes that we needed to follow in terms of contractual obligations and understanding what we support for a customer and what we don't support for a customer and how to deal with those types of requests. And I think they work really well. I think having that dotted line across where you do support and you don't support, but you're willing to offer help is a really good sort of place to be with a customer. And it really helps to develop that relationship, especially if you're willing to go that little bit of an extra mile over that dotted line. But they understand that when you've got to your limits, that's it. And you're already doing them a favor. And then I've also worked in a very fluid, process-driven side of it in incident management, in that when we started doing this 18 months ago, there was no process, there was no real understanding of what the incident management role was, and I've been lucky to be involved in writing that up and creating that job role and understanding the processes that are required. And I think what it's shown me more than anything is that having a baseline process really elevates the level at which everybody can work. I think having that fluidity for people to be creative with those different types of processes really sort of lets people shine. And I think one of the key things to understand in that is that everybody has their own method of working. So working from the same baseline allows people to be creative with their understanding of it and really, make that process work for them. And I think that's the key in processes, because I think if you stick to a rigid letter process, like, for example, if you get a cold call from someone who's reading from a script, you can tell straight away. But if you get a cold call from somebody who's allowed to try and sell you something, you can tell as well.
Yeah.
And I think that really, really works for processes, because you can have a baseline for what you want to achieve, but the road that you take there is really up to you. And I think that really, really benefits managed service and working in technology.
Yeah, and I think it's in some respects it's like many things, isn't it? It's process in the right place.
Yeah.
It's when you overkill processes and you underkill them. Can you underkill something? I guess you can. that would just not be killing, wouldn't it? That would be maiming. But there we go. That's a whole different
Different.
spin-off tour. But it is. I think you're absolutely right. Going the extra mile, being that little bit flexible, puts an awful lot of faith, into you from the customer. But having the process there to back you up to stop people taking advantage, I think is an interesting one. It's if your processes and your adherence to those processes are too rigid, you're going to look like you're just reading through the contract to say, nah, I'm not doing it. But we're in a service business, right? And one of the things that we will like to go the extra mile, we like to try and do things for the customer, but the amount of times that you hear across various different businesses the phrase of "we're not a charity," is probably is probably more than you should. So I think processes are good. Chris will be able to validate that. Even internally, processes wise, with the pre-sales piece, it's like put your requests in here in this way, and that way we can actually make sure that we've got all the right resource and we've got the backup to be able to drive it through in a proper time.
Yeah,
and we've got the traceability of it. When people start to buck the process, that's when things start to go wrong. But that, I would say, is a process in the right place. Are we doing it because of empire building? No, we're doing it so that we actually know that everything's being taken care of properly with the right level of interaction, should we say?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's perfect.
So what happens when you get a broken process? What happens then?
So I think there's a couple of ways you can frame it. I think it very much goes back to the glass half empty, glass half full sides. There's a broken process in something that's so rigid you can't stray from the line, and that's where you start to see problems in customer service. A good example of that is if you're working with a vendor on a major issue, and it stops being a collective effort to resolve the issue, it starts being a finger pointing exercise where people stop trying to fix the issue and start trying to prove that it's not them that's caused it. And that's where you start to see the massive levels of satisfaction drop in a customer and their attitude towards the service and the product as a whole start to drop. I think that's the sign of a broken process, just because it's so rigid you can't stray from the line. I
was going to say, I guess the other thing with a broken process is, from my viewpoint, is you've got to be open and prepared to change your process.
Yeah, definitely.
Ongoing. All the time. It's the second you find something that doesn't work, you shouldn't be sitting there and going, oh yeah, well, that's just the way the process works. It should be, nah, sorry, we need to tweak this, we need to twiddle that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big advocate for that. I think in working in incident management for the last year and being the builder of some of those processes, I think the main thing that I've tried to convey when putting those processes together is that these aren't the final say. When we send them out and start working from them, these aren't the final say, because we can't plan for every eventuality. Something's going to come up where we need to adapt.
So if you've created the processes, you are the direction to point the finger in. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. It's if we're going left or right, I'm turning left. Let's go from there, and then we'll understand where we need to be further down that road. We can't plan for every eventuality. Things are going to come up and scenarios are going to occur that we've not planned for, and we need to just work on our feet. And I think that's a really good sign of a fluid process that achieves the goal that it's set out to do. Like I said before, it's not necessarily the road that you take, it's the goal that you achieve at the end. It's understanding how to get there.
I think you could possibly boil this down to something quite simple, in the sense that, is there a good process, bad process, whatever it is, there's just a process, but there is an onus on everybody to be prepared to amend that process for the better.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's I guess it's a broken process when you refuse to change it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Might be wrong.
You allow for like creativity and everyone's people skills as well, if how proactive as such. It was quite interesting because you mentioned about the we're not a charity explanation, but actually as part of a charity you have volunteers that have signed up and are willing to help everyone out, and obviously that plays a good part as well. So even though we don't do things for free, of course, given obviously there is a process for it, but actually once the process is right and you guys are given that nice bit of freedom to steer away a little bit, maybe apply their people skills, maybe be creative, maybe apply more knowledge and expertise in some areas, don't know, but actually they're doing that because they want to and they're happy as well.
Yeah, and that's what comes back to the customer in the fact that you've got you've got a sort of a united front coming in there to basically better the process, better the product, better the service, whatever it is, for benefit of both parties, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's perfect way of describing it. Is you've got to be able to act on your feet. It's the way of understanding the outcome and the goal rather than the road that gets you there. It's using your skill set to determine how you're going to get there. Some people do that differently than others, and it's having that acceptance that not every time it's going to be the same. There's always going to be something that you weren't planning for, you didn't predict.
Cool, good. All right, so we've done the good, the bad, and the broken of the processes. We've done what did we say it was? The rights and wrongs of the licensing. So now it's the highs and lows of social media. Right, topic 3. Right, my topic for today is it's actually Jacob's topic, but I'm introducing it. Is the highs and lows of using social media for business. So I guess really, from my angle, the lines between business social media and personal social media are forever being sort of destroyed. I know that I'm connected to a bunch of people from work. I know that there are other people in work who absolutely point blank refuse any kind of connections. I haven't instigated most of them, by the way, but you have your Facebooks, etc., and you've got your personal life laid out on those. You've got your potentially more formal sort of LinkedIn, where you're effectively saying, yes, I'm happy to connect to you, and you can ask me a question anytime in the next 30 years, and I won't remember who you are, but I will answer your question. But we post things on there about podcasts, corporate updates, webinars that are coming up. Some people put praising up on LinkedIn, etc. But where are the boundaries? What's the right thing to do? What's the wrong thing to do with social media? Because I would put some very, very different content on my social media compared to what I put on corporate wise.
I think I'm going to be speaking from personal experience here, because I've got a wife that absolutely loves social media, and drilling down to the reasons why she likes social media, I'm going to be very nice and just say, look, all of her pictures look amazing. So if she is listening, there's nothing wrong with that at all. But I think in terms of the boundaries.
Is this a high risk route you're going down here, mate? Because I don't want to be responsible for anything.
No, don't worry at all. Don't worry. This is going somewhere. And I think that the boundaries between using it for a personal setting compared to business use, I think one of the ones that I tend to find quite a bit of is the I call it self-validation. Obviously, we use social media to kind of emphasize how great we're doing. You know, we've got a new car, or we've been on holiday, or we've got a new, I don't know, a new pet or something. And, you know, you end up getting a load of praise from people that you've never spoken to before, or people that you haven't spoken to in ages, close friends, relatives, all that good stuff. You don't tend to use that in a business setting. So if I was to say, oh, look, I've just got a new car, the only way I could probably use it is, oh, look at all the business miles I'm going to do with it. But is it relevant? Is it relevant in a business set? Is it relevant in a business setting? It's not. So, you know, that's kind of like a borderline which I never would see in a business setting unless the business allows it. So generally speaking, with social media within a business setting, so if you've got something corporate like Yammer, or if you use something like LinkedIn, or other things like Workplace from Facebook, you know, some bits can be quite formal. So it'll be things like collaboration, file sharing, all that good stuff. But, you know, we've got it within our Yammer site. We've got some fun pages where people share their cooking, or share their fitness goals. And as long as that's controlled, I think that could be quite a good environment to be in. So you've got some of the real, I wouldn't say, well, I'd say serious work is serious, but actually some of the other stuff that makes social media quite fun. That's sort of an area where, I mean, the validation from others is great, because that's where you do praise other people. But when you've got things like, you know, the pictures, you know, the selfies and bits and pieces, I never would see that. I never would see that in a business setting.
No, and I think, you know, I mean, I'm connected to God knows how many hundreds of people, whatever it is, on LinkedIn, and realistically, you know, it's built up over the last about 20 years, is it? I guess. But you know, there are people on there who pop up occasionally in my feed, and you see what they're sharing, and you're just like, I don't get it. It's almost like they're trying to use LinkedIn in a Facebook sort of casual style way, and it just jars. I know, light-hearted, absolutely fine, but at least it's kind of got to be topical, in some sort of relation to the working world.
Yeah.
But likewise, you know, I didn't quite get my account linking right a good few years ago, and I ended up posting my work stuff onto Facebook, and I had the flip of it with people coming back going, I don't want to know about your work. It's
how many likes you get?
Yeah, none. But I think there's quite a clear demarcation, really, between that sort of personal private thing. I think the interesting piece from my side is what you consider personal relationship. So LinkedIn is very formal. I don't mind if somebody's related, you know, business wise, work wise, whatever. I've met them at a conference. I'm happy to connect to them. When you get onto the sort of the Facebook social media type thing, if somebody who is a colleague turns around and says, actually, do you know, yeah, will you connect with me? I'll probably say yes, but I'm not going to talk about work on Facebook, because it's really there for friendship and social and, you know, nonsensical, you know, whatever.
I'm not saying work is not positive vibes, but, you know, talk about things other than work.
You know, it's coming up to the 6 months reviews, don't you? Right?
Oh, yeah.
But it's true, though, right? It is a very different arena.
Yeah.
And I guess, actually, you know, is there a pattern to the kind of people that I connect to from work on Facebook? Probably not, actually. I think it's a mixture of, there's been salespeople, there's been support people, there's been back office staff. So yeah, I think it's a real mishmash of, you know, if you get on well with somebody at work, I don't see the issue with it.
Yeah, I think there's a really interesting dynamic now as well between the two in interviewing specifically, especially now in a post-COVID world where I reckon 95% of the time, if you went for interview now, it'd be like this over video, which is not stopping your interviewer looking at your social media pages while we're sat here talking. Yeah, and I think that's where people need to be really careful, and I think that's where sometimes the lines are blurred, because, like you say, some people use LinkedIn like Facebook, and I don't necessarily think that that's the correct way of using it. Sometimes that can hinder you more than it can help you. I've definitely seen some questionable things on LinkedIn that would make me think, what are you doing? Where are you
You
on the
think you're
right?
being funny when in fact,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not the best of sort of pictures to paint about yourself. And I think that's a really sort of, in this new world, especially with social media is new in itself, you know, it's relatively new on all formats, but now this new world of instant access, everybody's got access to everything, unless you're super careful and, you know, hide everything in your social media platforms. Just a Google search of your name, you can find virtually everything out about a person. And I think that sometimes is a danger as well, knowing the people out there. But especially in the business world, where one comment you made 5 years ago can really stop you from progressing your career. You know, and it's literally just one comment that can stop you from getting that, you know, that next promotion.
The internet
next
never
job.
forgets, right?
Yeah, exactly that. You know, it's there forever. Someone's taken a screenshot of it somewhere, and that picture will be out there forever, or that comment will be out there forever. So yeah, I think there's that element to the social media side of business as well, that the blurred lines are getting almost too blurred into the fact of merging the two.
Also, there's another angle to it as well, which is you've got something like LinkedIn, which is, as I said, it's more of a formal thing, isn't it? Really. But you've also got your Instagrams and your Twitters and stuff like that. And of course, once you put something up on there, that can go anywhere. You've got no restriction over who can see it, who's not seeing it, who's, you know, who retweets it, who, I mean, you know, fundamentally similar for lots of platforms. But, you know, you do have to be super careful, I think, how you use it. I guess, you know, that's why I tend to keep things completely separate. Is, you know, I won't put work stuff on Facebook, and I won't put, you know, sort of Facebook stuff on LinkedIn. But bearing in mind they're owned by the same.
Yeah.
No, they're not. I don't know. No, Microsoft bought LinkedIn, didn't they?
yes.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yes, exactly. I knew that. I'm up on this. I'm down with the kids. But yeah, I think you know, there's a lot of people who don't necessarily play it right. But you know, used in the right way, it's pretty powerful. I mean, you only have to look at advertising webinars and stuff that we do.
Yeah, definitely.
That's great.
There's a room for people who have built brands as well through social media. You can do virtually anything with it, and I think it's about, you know, understanding the tool and using it to the best of its abilities. And I think that's the real sort of take home is, well, understand your audience as well as the platform.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've obviously spent a fair amount of time sort of talking about the negative sides of it. I was talking to my wife, I don't know, last week, something like that, and she was talking about a perfume shop that she uses regularly, and it's a well-known one. And she basically turned around and went, it's just a pharmacy in Wales. And it's like, right. And they've just built themselves a fantastic brand on social media and, you know, great website. And all of a sudden they've got like a national market.
Yeah.
So yeah, fair play.
Yeah, definitely. I think, especially with the audiences that you can get on those platforms, it's very easy. Or, well, I say that with bated breath. I think it's easier than it was 15 years ago to build a brand or a global brand now, because of the outreach of social media. You know, all you need really is 2 or 3 influencers to pick up your brand, and you've got, you know, the outreach to millions of people around the world.
Couldn't really do that with MySpace, could you? We're talking like 15, 16 years ago. Couldn't do that.
After you dialed up.
Yeah.
I could show you what music I like by uploading a code. That's it.
Yeah. Cool. Right. I think we're just about at time. Actually, to be honest, I've got no idea what time we've totally run to, but we'll work that one out. Thank you very much, gentlemen. I hope you've enjoyed it.
Pleasure.
I hope you had a bit of a laugh whilst going through the pain of recording it. So yes, just a reminder that we have had Chris Wheeler, who is M365 pre-sales consultant, Jacob Hay, who is incident manager team lead, and we will once again be back in 2 weeks' time with episode 14. Thanks very much. Take care.
This is the Mod Pod, brought to you by Modality, helping businesses optimize their Microsoft technologies everywhere.